We've talked a lot about building horsepower on a twin cam, from the stage 2 with just a camshaft to the stage 3 with increasing your displacement, and the stage 4 going all out with some heads, throttle body, and injectors. Now all that power has to go somewhere, and one thing that's come up quite a bit is, what about the drivetrain? What about the compensator, the clutch, and the transmission? Well, today we're going to address the compensator and look at what you can do if you're having an issue or if you're concerned about it when you're adding power to your motorcycle. Now, as a lot of you may be aware, the Twin Cam 96 had a lot of compensator issues, and a lot of that came from that compensator was recycled from the earlier versions of the Twin Cam. We started getting bigger inch engines, putting more power into them, and the limitations of the compensator became very obvious. Now, what the compensator does is basically it buffers all that torque from the engine, and as you go to start adding power to the engine, it's going to become pretty obvious that there's a problem there. And it's not necessarily the engine or the drivetrain, it's the compensator itself. It just can't handle all the torque you're putting out from that engine after you've done all these upgrades. And like we mentioned, even on the 96, that engine didn't have the best compensator in the world. And even today, we still hear problems with compensators on the 103. So before we get too far into the video today, don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. Now, when it comes to compensators, this isn't exactly a part that I would just run out and change just for the hell of it. I would only change it if you suspect you're having an issue. Now, if you're having an issue, some of the signs you might be experiencing are going to be this loud clang when you hit the starter coming from the primary area. If you're having trouble getting into first gear or finding neutral, I mean, serious problems getting it into gear or finding neutral. I mean, if it's Harleys don't find neutral very well all the time, but obviously you'll know if you have a problem getting into first gear or neutral. And also, if it sounds like somebody took a sack of rocks and dumped them in your primary, and you're running down the road, you know, kind of low RPM, about 2,000 to 2,200 RPMs, and you hear this like, yeah, that's definitely going to be a compensator issue. But truly the only way to know is to pull the primary cover and look at it and see if you have a bunch of pieces fall out. But if you're experiencing any of those problems, it's going to be quite obvious as to what's going on. But don't fret, there are some options out there to go with heavier duty compensators, or, as we'll get to later in the video, you can just completely eliminate that thing and not have to worry about it ever again. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit on doing an eliminator for the compensator. So first up today is going to be, obviously, the Screamin Eagle compensator. This is a great replacement for OEM. If you're having an issue with your OEM compensator, do not replace it with another OEM compensator. You're just going to have the problem again. Now, any good Harley shop, if you take it to, especially if you go to a dealer, they're going to recommend going to the Screamin Eagle compensator. Now, out of all the options as far as compensators go, compensator replacements, the Screamin Eagle is going to be the cheaper option. The Screamin Eagle compensator is a much better design than the OEM. The Screamin Eagle compensator has more travel, it's a lot heavier duty, it has heavier duty springs, and with it having more travel, it's going to be able to handle that more torque that your higher compression, bigger bore, higher horsepower engine is going to be putting out. Now, the other things that they've done with the Screamin Eagle compensator is that they put better needle bearings in it, it has improved oil flow passages, and it also has an oil deflector in there to keep that oil where it needs to be to keep everything lubricated properly. To me, this is something they should have done with the OEM unit, but that's Harley-Davidson. I looked at some aftermarket compensators out there for you guys, and they're all pretty much the same, whether you want to go with twin power or drag specialties. To me, they're going to be better than the OEM. They're all designed for high torque, high horsepower motors, just like the Screamin Eagle, and they're relatively the same price. So if you're looking for an aftermarket option versus the Screamin Eagle, twin power drag specialties is a good one to go with. Drag specialties and twin power also have the longer travel. Now, if you're going to replace the compensator and you really want to go all out, look at the Baker from Baker Drivetrain, the Baker compensator. This one is very expensive. It's about twice the price of the Screamin Eagle, but if you're going to run a compensator and you really don't want to have any more worries going down the road, the Baker is going to be the way to go. And now the Baker has a completely different design, than any of the other compensators, like the Screamin Eagle, the Drag Specialties, or the Twin Power Compensator. Those are all kind of designed around the OEM design, just an improved OEM design. Now, the Baker is a completely different animal versus Screamin Eagle, Drag Specialties, and Twin Power. Now, what Baker has done is they have decreased the cam lobe size in their compensator, which also reduces wear and tear. The increased radial width of the cam lobe in the Baker compensator reduces the pressure loading that the compensator experiences. The Baker actually uses a much better oiling system, which uses the centrifugal force to get the oil to all the radial and axial thrust surfaces within the compensator. This gives you a much quieter and much smoother operation over the OEM designs, and this could potentially be absolutely the last compensator that you ever have to buy. Now, I did mention another option at the beginning of the video, and at the beginning of the video, I mentioned just completely eliminating the compensator altogether. Now, a compensator eliminator is essentially just a sprocket that uses spacers to get everything lined up that you mount directly in place of where your compensator would normally be. Now, the job of the compensator is to buffer the torque coming from the engine basically to the starter and the rest of the drivetrain, but you can make it a solid drive with just putting that compensator eliminator on there. Now, I kind of have some mixed feelings about this because a high torque engine, you have that compensator to kind of buffer that torque from hitting your transmission, your clutch, and your starter. So it's really kind of up to you on what you want to do. But I will say this, a lot of guys out there have been running compensator eliminators. They've been running them for years. They've got a lot of miles on them with zero issues whatsoever. And by using a compensator eliminator, this reduces a lot of weight and rotating mass on your engine, up to about 5 pounds over the OEM compensator. This is also going to be the most inexpensive option when it comes to replacing a bad compensator or just swapping one out to eliminate the problem as it is. Now, with this just being a sprocket, I don't really think you can go wrong with just buying a sprocket for them, but some companies I looked at were Twin Power, Vulcan Industries, and Drag Specialties. So if you're looking to replace it with just a solid sprocket, I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, if you're not hammering on the bike real hard or anything, but like I say, a lot of people that have changed these out, they are extremely happy with it. They love it. They don't have to ever worry about a compensator going bad again. And there's a lot of motorcycles out there, a lot of metrics that don't use a compensator. Honestly, for me, I would probably stick with a compensator. And like I said, I wouldn't run out and pull your compensator out if you're not having an issue with it. But if you are truly having an issue with your compensator and it's starting to fail on you, like I mentioned, do not go back with OEM. At least go with the Screamin Eagle or the Drag Specialties or the Twin Power at the very minimum. But if you really want to go all out and have a good compensator, I think it's worth the extra money to go ahead and buy the Baker. Now, that's not to say a compensator eliminator isn't a bad idea at all. There's a lot of them out there, there's a lot of miles on them, and yeah, it could potentially, theoretically, cause problems with your engine, wear out your starter, but chances of that happening are probably slim to none. So guys, be sure to stay tuned for next week, because now that we've taken care of the torque coming out of the engine, we're moving back to the clutch system. High horsepower, high torque engines, they could definitely put some strain on your clutch. So next week, we're going to look at the clutch system and see what you can do to your clutch system to beef it up, to handle that extra horsepower, to where it's not slipping, and all your hard-earned money that went into this engine to build this horsepower and torque, it isn't being lost going to the rear wheel by a slipping clutch. Before I leave you guys today, please be sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. So until next week, guys, you stay safe on the streets, bundle up, ride safe, watch those cars. I've been out kind of getting around, exploring some of the damage around here on my bike, and people aren't paying attention as usual, and I about got greased a few times. But anyhow, I'll catch you guys next week. Y'all stay safe out there.